Humanity has always been drawn to the water's edge, right? Just staring out, wondering what's beyond the horizon. The ocean, it's really our planet's defining feature, a massive force that has shaped our history for thousands of years. So today, we're going to chart that incredible journey of discovery, from the very first sailors who dared to leave the shore, all the way to the robotic explorers plumbing the deepest, darkest trenches on Earth. For most of our time on this planet, this is what the ocean was. It was this beautiful, absolutely terrifying, and seemingly infinite mystery. I mean, it was everything all at once. A barrier, a source of food, a superhighway, and a world filled with unimaginable wonders and dangers. And really, it all comes down to this one simple, powerful question. This is the question that kicked everything off. It just echoes through the ages, whispered by the earliest humans, shouted by brave sailors, and today, it's literally programmed into the robotic explorers we send into the deep. So for our earliest ancestors, the ocean was this realm of gods and monsters. But that deep-seated fear was mixed with an equally powerful fascination. They didn't have maps, they didn't have compasses, but they were absolutely determined to find out what was waiting for them just over the horizon. Long before GPS or any modern instruments, the first explorers took to the seas. And these people weren't just sailors. You got to think of them as master observers, almost like scientists, who learned to read the ocean itself as if it were a living map. And the ways they did it were nothing short of ingenious. I mean, look at this. The Polynesians could actually detect islands from miles away just by reading the patterns of the ocean swells. The Phoenicians completely mastered celestial navigation, using the North Star to build a massive trading empire. And all the while, the Greeks and Romans were busy, meticulously mapping every bit of coastline they could, turning the sea into a predictable network for trade and, well, conquest. And speaking of incredible feats, we can't forget the Vikings. Their longships were so durable they could navigate the ridiculously treacherous North Atlantic, getting them all the way to North America a full 500 years before Columbus ever set sail. Pretty amazing. Okay, so this brings us to the 15th century, and this is where the motivation for exploration just shifts dramatically. It's not just about charting coastlines anymore. Now it's about crossing entire oceans, and it's driven by this powerful new mix of commerce, conquest, and just pure curiosity. It basically became a global race. Empires were desperately looking for faster routes to the riches of the East. They wanted to bypass the old trade networks. Spices, silk, gold, those were the big prizes. But alongside all that economic hunger was something way more fundamental, that pure human desire to just see what's out there, to fill in the blank spaces on the map. The ocean was this place of enormous risk, but also enormous opportunity. And this timeline just shows how fast our world map was redrawn. It's kind of staggering. In just one generation, look at this. In 1492, Columbus connects two entire hemispheres. Just 6 years later, da Gama opens up a direct sea route to India. And by 1519, Magellan's cruise sets off to prove once and for all that our world is round. But even with all this new knowledge, the deep ocean was still a place of intense mystery and fear. Early mapmakers would often fill the unexplored parts of their charts with these terrifying sea serpents and horrifying giant beasts. I mean, when you look at these wild drawings, you have to wonder, right? What on earth were sailors actually seeing out there that could inspire creatures like that? The short answer? Nope. There were no krakens or leviathans, at least not like the ones on the maps. But that doesn't mean they weren't there for a reason. The truth is, these monsters were really psychological markers. They were a kind of visual shorthand for the great unknown. When a cartographer drew a sea serpent, they were basically saying, "Here be dragons," a clear warning that this part of the world was uncharted and really, really dangerous. They were the embodiment of all the fears and tall tales that come from long, lonely voyages at sea. And of course, as science progressed, we figured out the truth. The so-called monsters were often just real animals seen for a split second and completely misunderstood. Imagine seeing a giant squid's tentacle, or the fluke of a diving whale like this one, or even just a pod of dolphins in the dark. It could easily become the basis for a terrifying legend in the mind of a tired, superstitious sailor. So this brings us to a major turning point in our story. Around the 19th century, the reason for heading to sea, it started to change again. It wasn't just about trade or territory anymore. Now it was about understanding the ocean for its own sake. And so a whole new field of science was born, oceanography. For the very first time, expeditions were launched with the main goal of answering fundamental questions about the ocean itself. Questions like, how deep is it? What actually lives down there? How does this whole massive system work? And the gold standard for this new scientific era was the HMS Challenger expedition. Now, this wasn't a short trip. We're talking about a 4-year global mission. Its crew just methodically sampled, dredged, and cataloged life across 70,000 nautical miles. The sheer volume of data they collected, well, it literally wrote the first textbooks on ocean science. And get this, it's still referenced today. And that brings us to today. The spirit of the Challenger is definitely still alive. But the tools we use for exploration are something those early pioneers could never have even dreamed of. We are now exploring a frontier that is, in a lot of ways, even more challenging than outer space. Just think about that contrast for a second. The ancient Polynesians navigated by literally feeling the waves with their bodies. Today, we use sonar to create these incredibly high-resolution maps of the entire seabed from miles above. We have satellites tracking ocean currents from orbit and robotic submarines that dive into trenches so deep the pressure would instantly crush a person. But here it is. This might be the most astounding fact of all. Even with all this incredible technology, despite centuries of exploration, the vast majority of our planet's oceans remain completely unexplored, unmapped, and totally unseen by human eyes. So why is that? Well, it's because the deep ocean is one of the most hostile environments you can possibly imagine. We're talking about a world of absolute, total blackness, of pressures that can literally bend steel, and of temperatures that are just hovering above freezing. And on top of all that, it is just unimaginably vast. Exploring it is one of the greatest scientific and engineering challenges we've ever faced. And that right there is the most exciting part. Every single time we send a new submersible down into the deep, we find things we never, ever imagined. New species, entire new ecosystems powered by chemistry instead of sunlight. It leaves us with the very same question our ancestors asked at the water's edge. But now we ask it of the depths. If we found all this in the tiny fraction we've explored, what else is waiting to be discovered in that great, dark, beautiful unknown?